The cinema of Michael Curtiz is so much more well-known than the director himself. We celebrate the 4th of July with Yankee Doodle Dandy. We celebrate Yuletide with White Christmas. And we watch Casablanca over and over again and fall in love. Curtiz is justifiably remembered for those and so many other great films, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Mildred Pierce, 181 films over an incredible career that began in 1912 and ran until 1961. But the 3 horror films that he directed at Warner Brothers, Dr. X, Mystery of the Wax Museum, and The Walking Dead, so much of what's in those movies inspired other horror movies. And it took horror to another level.
Don't be afraid tonight. Keep your eyes closed and relax.
Jack Warner was very reluctant to get into horror films, but the Depression really bit into the movie business, and Warner Brothers really needed to get people into theaters. So what was the best way to do that in 1932? And that was horror movies.
I think Dr. Xavier is using very unethical methods.
Necessity has no ethics, sir.
So in making Dr. X, Curtiz was one of the early purveyors of Technicolor and used it quite well. Curtiz loved working with shadows and the horror of the Pers Westmore makeup that was designed in conjunction with Max Factor. And this was in an era before makeup departments became relatively sophisticated. Dr. X also introduced Lionel Atwill. I believe this was his second movie. And Dr. X gave Faye Raye her first movie screen. The publicity for Dr. X stressed the romance angle between the 2 leads, Lee Tracy and Faye Raye, and then they promoted it as a comedy mystery. You have Lee Tracy in this kind of comedic role, almost as though it's an East Side Kids type of comedy, wandering through the house, stumbling into skeletons, and having this hand buzzer gag where he shakes people's hands and so forth. And of course, this was a movie about a serial killer, a moon killer. So there was a lot of salacious material.
Gentlemen, this is cannibalism.
The scientists dressed up in blood-spattered jackets, a human heart. People are handcuffed in chairs. You see a lot of quick cuts, accelerating the action to give the audience a sense of getting their pulses racing and leaning forward in their seats. And all of this stuff was very shocking to 1932 audiences.
I'm so afraid. I'm shaking like a leaf.
Mystery of the Wax Museum was the last 2-color Technicolor picture made. The critics didn't really care for it, but it was amazingly successful.
I tell you, the whole place is a morgue, do you hear? A morgue, a morgue.
Both Dr. X and Mystery of the Wax Museum, when you see the restorations, you finally get to see these films as people in the theaters saw them in 1932 and 1933.
You fiend!
These horror films that he directed at Warner Brothers, people tend to overlook them or maybe underappreciate them. However, Curtiz gave everything his all. And on The Walking Dead, that movie is really a cut above. It was thoughtful. There was a rationale behind it.
You take away my life and offer me a favor in return. That's what I call a bargain.
And when you see Karloff in The Walking Dead, he brings this humanity and sensitivity to his performance.
Please, we're only trying to help you.
Of course, Nancy, of course. You have helped me.
The Walking Dead actually dealt with actual experiments by Dr. Alex Carroll to try to bring people back to life. So you had some of this true life, ripped from the headlines style that was imbued into The Walking Dead. Now, of course, a short schedule, austere budget, and a runtime of 66 minutes, that didn't stop Curtiz from getting what he wanted. He had one scene where Karloff is brought back to life, and he took an entire day of arranging lighting and the close-up on Karloff's face just to get that scene perfect. So you have Karloff, who is brought back as if he is an instrument of a higher being.
He seems to be driven by strange impulses. as if he were the instrument of some supernatural power.
Boris Karloff was the only actor at that time in 1936 that you could take and put in The Walking Dead, and he elevated the entire movie.
Leave the dead to their maker. The Lord our God is a jealous God.
After The Walking Dead, there were no more horror films in Curtiz's resume. And horror films were increasingly viewed, as the decade changed, as B movies. And Michael Curtiz was not about making B movies. He was about making A movies. And you look back on Michael Curtiz's storied career, this group of 3 horror films at Warner Brothers in the 1930s are a very rich part of his legacy.